Welcome to the Assembly Chapter tutorial video for Desktop PC Essentials. Let's begin with some preparation steps.
Make sure your workplace is clear of clutter and your parts are organized. Here we have our parts: the motherboard, the power supply, disk drive, hard drive, video card, and RAM. Here's your standard case layout with disk drive bays, hard drive bays, the front of the case where your USB ports are, the cables that are inside the case are for the USB, and the back of the case is for your expansion slots and case fans. The front panel is removed for easier access to install parts. Here is your thumb screw, normally used for screwing in parts of the case rather than the components themselves. On the back of the case, on the right side, we see the power supply that's already installed. In the middle, we have where the expansion slots, such as the video card, is going to be installed. The slots are moved. On the left side, we see where all the motherboard ports, such as the Ethernet and USB ports, are at. Above them, we see the case fan. If you don't have a video card, the motherboard does have onboard graphics and can display video. Some of the tools you will need is a non-magnetic screwdriver. The reason we use a non-magnetic screwdriver is to avoid damaging components such as the hard drive. Granted, magnetic screwdrivers are good for picking up small screws, but you don't want to risk damaging the components. You may also want Velcro strips for cable management and a small container such as a tackle box to store your loose screws.
Once preparation is complete, we can begin assembly. Note that our processor is already installed. To install, align the processor's pins with the motherboard slot and then fasten the brace. Then, apply thermal paste to assist in heat transfer. The heatsink and fan usually come together and are attached by 4 screws. If there is a fan, attach the power cable to the motherboard.
Here we are installing the motherboard. Make sure all your screws are lined up and make sure that the prongs on your input-output guard on the back of your case do not stick inside any of your USB or Ethernet ports. Once you have your motherboard set in place, place each screw and screw down with firm pressure. Do not over tighten, as you may cause damage to the motherboard. For the sake of time, we are going to fast forward to where all screws are put in. Next, we are installing the video card. It slides into the PCIe slot. Note that we have already moved the 2 expansion slot ports in the back of the case to allow for the output of the video card to show. The card will slide into place, and then you will fasten it with 2 screws to the back so it does not move around. The next thing to install is the power supply. It has its own slot. It's either going to be mounted on the bottom of the case or the top. This one is in the bottom. It's held in by 2 to 4 screws. Note that this is a modular power supply. For now, we want to keep all the cables outside of the case to make sure that we have room and a clear view of where we can put the rest of our parts. Next, we are installing the hard drive. Make sure to install the hard drive in a place where you can connect your SATA and power cables later on. It is held in by 2 screws on each side, but for the sake of time, we're only going to show the one side being screwed in. Make sure to screw in the other side to avoid the hard drive from bouncing around inside your case. This will cause damage. Some cases allow for a quick hard drive installment where they can just slide and click into place without any screws. Next is the disk drive. It is being installed from the front and you push it back into place. It is held in by 4 screws, 2 on each side. Once again, we're only showing 1/2. Make sure to put in the other 2 screws. Next thing to install is the RAM. On this motherboard there are 2 RAM slots. When installing the RAM, notice the offset notch. Make sure this lines up with your RAM slot. Failure to do so will cause damage to both the RAM and the motherboard. When you are installing the RAM, apply firm pressure. The 2 clips on the side will click down with the RAM when it is properly seated. Do not apply excess pressure as you will cause damage to the RAM. If you have to remove the RAM, make sure the clips are pushed outward so that you can safely remove the RAM without causing any damage to the motherboard or the RAM itself. Next, we are going to hook up our cables from the power supply to the components. The 4-pin cable to the motherboard, located in the top left corner. The 16-pin to the motherboard, which is in the middle right side. Next is the 2 6-pin power cables to the video card. Make sure they're lined up correctly and they should snap into place. Next is the power cable to the hard drive and the disk drive. Note that this cable can hook onto multiple drives. Not all cables are like this, so use accordingly. After you hook the power cables to the drives, attach the SATA cables. Make sure to connect the SATA cable to both the motherboard and the drives themselves. At this point is where you would use the Velcro strips to help with your cable management. Try to avoid using zip ties as you may have to rearrange at some point. The final step is to replace the panels on the case. There are many different cases and they will vary in height, width, and how they will piece together. When you go to place your new tower, make sure it has proper ventilation and that the cables are not clustered together. This will help organization and damage reduction. But for more details, please refer to our other videos and the written material. Now it's time to enjoy your new PC.